Hey, baker friends. I've been giving some things some thought. I do other baking besides bread machine yeast spreads. Not a ton, not anywhere near as much as my bread stuff, but I decided that on my YouTube channel, I would offer up some other things, some pies, some cookies, I don't know, whatever I come up with, especially my old family recipes. So I thought I would start with pie crust because there seems to be immense fear of making pie crust. Believe it or not, it's so easy and it takes 10 minutes as long as you have a food processor. If you don't have a food processor, you can use a pastry blender, and I will get my pastry blender out to show you later. But in the meantime, the very first thing you need to make this pie crust recipe is 2 sticks of butter, and this is for a double recipe. And the first thing you have to do with the butter, I took it out of the refrigerator a few minutes ago, and I'm not being super, these do not have to be measured. I read a recipe once, cut your butter into 1-inch cubes. No, I'm not going to bother with that. It's not necessary, but I am just gonna kind of rough cut it in Ellen style all over the place because it doesn't need to be perfect and neat. And you could put it in or on anything. I just happen to use a paper plate. Not super important what you put it in. I'm going to throw this in the freezer. Freezer, 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 not refrigerator. And that is going to hang out in there for at least an hour. So you can do your butter a couple days before. You could, I suppose you could cut up a bunch of butter and you knew how much, 2 sticks or whatever, put it in a Ziploc bag and just keep it in the freezer. I don't know. I don't usually do that. I just, if I know I'm making pie crust, I cut up my butter. So butter is the first thing you have to do to be prepared for pie crust. The second thing is as simple as walking over to your refrigerator and getting some ice. Ooh, flying ice cubes. And I'll get that in a minute. And putting the cold water in, and that's plenty. Stick this in my fridge so that when I am ready to make my crust, I have my ice water. The only other ingredients I will need are all-purpose flour, a little tiny bit of sugar, and about a teaspoon of salt. And this will all be made in the food processor. And again, the hardest part of this recipe, honestly, is cutting up the butter and putting it in the freezer. So we're back and we're now going to officially make the pie crust. So I have here 310 grams of all-purpose flour that I have weighed carefully. And I have 7 grams of granulated sugar, just regular table sugar. And, I'm sorry, 5 grams of sugar, 7 grams of regular salt. The sugar is not super, it gives it a little bit extra flavor. It's only about a teaspoon. You could leave it out, you could add more. It's kind of not a super important ingredient, but the salt is very important. You must have the salt. Don't scrimp on the salt. All right, so what I'm going to do is just pulse this a bit. And all I'm doing right now is simply mixing up the flour, sugar, and salt. Okay, I'm gonna take this off. I'm going to run over to my freezer. Oh, by the way, I mentioned a pastry blender. If you do not have a food processor, you can do it the old-fashioned way. This is called a pastry blender, and it's used for cutting in the butter. So what you would do is put the flour, sugar, and salt in a bowl, make sure they were mixed, put the butter in, and you just kind of, and you kind of have to push it off and push it off. It's a little bit of work, but not terribly impossible, because guess what? That's how I make biscuits, baking powder biscuits. And that will be another video, because my Grandma Pauline's biscuits were the best. So sometime I will make those and you will see me use this. I'm going to run over and get the butter. Which is frozen. And I'm going to put it all in. In you go, butter, butter, butter. In my house, no baseball, so we don't say batter, batter, batter. We say butter, butter, butter. And I'm going to grab one more thing while I remember, which is wax paper. Okay, so I'm going to pulse this. I mean, my mother's recipe says pulse it about 3 or 4 times, but since this is a double recipe, take a little longer. So I'm gonna check it, and Neil's gonna stick his camera in there while I get a spatula, which I forgot to get. And there's still kind of bigger chunks of butter. You want it just a bit smaller than that. You want it to get more like maybe to the shape of peas or corn. So I'm gonna put this back together. And by the way, this is a 14-cup food processor. You cannot do this in a tiny little mini food processor if that's what you have. Okay, I'm going to just check to make sure I have no big butter globs. There's one slightly big, but one is okay. I think maybe 1 or 2 more pulses. All right. All right. Now we need our ice water. I have a cup on my scale. My ice water is definitely nice and cold. I'm going to start with about 110, 111 grams. I'm going to put that in here. Oops. Close enough. And this is supposed to go in with the machine running. So what I'm going to do is pour and pulse at the same time. Okay, I can already tell that it needs just a bit more water, so I'm just going to pour a little bit more in here. I like these squishy silicone measuring cups. I just got these recently. Now the biggest mistake people make with pie crust is processing it too much or handling it too much. So I want you to notice how little I do both. Do you see that it's following the blade around? That's when to stop. Does that look like pie crust? No, it does not, but it will. So I'm going to lay out 2 pieces of wax paper, like that. And I'm going to dump it out like so. Go over there, oops, a little piece on the blade. All right, so this looks kind of like a course meal, right? But I promise you that it's going to start sticking together, and I'm just gonna divide it roughly in half. I know you're thinking, how can that be pie crust? Have I ever told you a lie before? I'm not gonna start now. Okay, all I'm doing is patting that into a round disc, round-ish disc, flattening it out, and then these two babies, whoops, just like this, are going to go into the refrigerator till a little bit later, because I'm going to make a pie with it today. But if I didn't want to make a pie until next week, I would just stick these in a plastic, Ziploc baggie, and put them in the freezer. You could freeze these for several months, believe it or not. So if you are, for example, if you know that you want to bake a pie or 2 pies or 3 pies for the holidays, for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, for Hanukkah, for Kwanzaa, for whatever you might celebrate, you can make your pie crust and stick it in the freezer. It will be good for quite a long time. It's the perfect make-ahead thing. So for right now, I need to get all the air out, not that it really is going to matter for this, but I'm going to stick these in the fridge, and when it's time to make the pie, I will take them out maybe 5 minutes before I want to roll them out, and we'll do that a little bit later. I've got a well-floured countertop, and I'm going to have a well-floured rolling pin, and I'm just going to start rolling it to be relatively a circle to go in this pie plate. I am not going to pretend that I am the world's best pie maker. I can definitely always make delicious pie crust. And sometimes I'm lucky enough to make pretty pie crust. What's the most important thing? I mean, yes, of course you want it to look pretty, but I gotta tell you that if it tastes good, that's the most important part. This, of course, is the bottom crust. Now, normally you have a couple kinds of pies that you use this pie crust for. You have a single crust, which is an open. You might have baked the crust first, like with like a pudding type pie, or a fresh fruit pie, because you don't, if it's a fresh fruit pie, it's fresh fruit and you don't bake the fruit. All right, or there's the double crust pie like apple, or in this case, we're doing cherry. So you can see my dough, and I'm just sort of looping it over, and I'm going to move my pie plate, and I'm just going to make sure that everything will pick up. And I'm going to do like this. That gets it in there, but of course, now we have some sort of centering business going on. This is a bottom crust. Don't worry too much if you see a little bit of a hole or something like that. Sometimes there is a little Robin Hooding involved where I take extra, like I have right here, for example. It's gonna cut it with my bench scraper. Sometimes I grab a pair of scissors, but I didn't. So I can kind of, oops, wet my finger a teeny bit, let the crust a teeny bit, because it has so much flour, it wouldn't stick. And then just kind of added on over here. And I'm not going to do a lot to make it pretty. I am just pressing it in. You just check all the parts over here. All right, I need to do another Robin Hood maneuver. Over here. And get a little wet. And add it on to a little bare spot over here. Okay. Now, this is going to be a cherry pie, and I make everything from scratch. I have never made a cake mix in my life. I have never made a cookie dough, pre-made anything. However, where I live, sour pie cherries are not to be found. So a while back, my mother was craving cherry pie, and I searched on Amazon, and I did find this. I think it's from, it's from Wisconsin. Winkies or Wenkies, I don't know how to say it. A W-I-E-N-K-E Market. Door County cherry pie filling. Again, I never buy mixes. I never buy canned filling. This stuff is delicious. And I can't get the cherries to make it anyway. So this makes it really easy for a pie crust demo. Because at this point, I just dump it in. I have a nice long spatula. Come out. Making fun noises. And this stuff is so, it's like sweet and tart at the same time as cherry pie is supposed to be. Highly recommend this particular cherry pie filling. So that is pretty much that. And the next thing I'm going to do is make a lattice top. But before that, I think I have to do these edges. Now, I am not perfect. My husband does a better job at this, but I'm going to do my best. So first thing I'm going to do is pick it up all the way around. So flour. All right. I'm going to pick it up because there's all that overhang. I'm just going to pick it up. And pick it up. And then after I do this, I'm gonna make the little scallopy things. And you take your thumb and your index finger with one hand and your index finger with the other hand. Keep them very well floured. Just go like this. Pink, 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 pink. And we're gonna turn off the camera so I can finish this, and then I'll show you the lattice. So I've got the second half of the dough, and I'm going to attempt to roll it out into more of a rectangle because we're going to be making the lattice with this little scallop wheel or whatever it's called. I don't know if that's what it's called. On an apple pie, you would make a whole pie crust, put it on top, cut little air vents. Cherry pies, traditionally, of course, have the lattice. Now, a little secret, you really don't have to weave in and out. We don't. You can. We don't. It's harder to do. And I'm for easy. So, and it looks just as pretty. You'll see, it looks really nice. So, want the lattice maybe, what, inch-ish? I'm looking at my husband and asking him. So, that flowering, I'm just gonna cut an edge here. And I'm just gonna cut that. Cut that. Cut that. Not doing it evenly at all. I gotta tell you a secret, you guys. My husband is actually the pie crust guy. I make the pie crust, but he is the one who makes the pie look pretty. He's making me do it today, and I am nervous, so there you go. Your friend Ellen who bakes is not perfect. Cannot do everything. So, just gonna go from there and hope it looks good. All right, we'll reserve that and that for just in case we need more dough. Gonna get rid of those. All right, let's hope that I can do this. I'm gonna do it on the pie or on the crust. I think it's on the pie, right? Oop, before that rips. Just gonna lay that down. There we go. Pull off that excess. Please don't stick. I think oh, that's a good long piece. Put that there. Tuck that down. Okay. Let me see, maybe I'll kind of measure this one first a little bit. Go up there. Err on the side of longer. Okay. Trying not to disturb the pretty edges. Okay. Maybe adjust that. It's kind of like jelly in there. It's not too hard to move these over. Okay. And I'm gonna turn it the other way so I can easily get to the other way. Let me see. Do that one in the middle. Here, let's do this way. I'm making thumbprints to get rid of that. Let's see how I measured that. Oh, pretty good. Just a plain plop down crust is a little easier, but this is what we're doing. Cut that off there. Hair on the side of too big. There we go. Tuck that under. I've told you all my big, deep, dark secret that Neil, whose finger you are seeing right now, is always the one who does the pretty. I mean, I've done it, but he does it better. Oops, that wasn't good. Pulled that one apart. All right, that one there. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. Do I put one more right there? Yes or no? Yes, this one? Okay. He won't talk, but he points. Is that too long? Okay. Ah, There we go. Okay, after all of that, it actually looks really pretty. So the next thing, we have a little bit of pie left over. And while I am brushing the pie with milk, and I'm going to add another special ingredient in a minute. I'm just gonna leave that over there. So I'm gonna brush this with milk. Please be gentle. Pie crust is delicate. Silicone brushes don't absorb any of the milk, so that's why it just kind of drips off. And it's what I use on the bread because they don't deflate. You can use a pastry brush on pie crust instead. I just kind of got this out. It doesn't matter, really. It's not gonna, you're not gonna see all these little milk bits when it's baked. And by the way, the next thing I'm going to say is totally optional, but we like to sprinkle on some turbinado sugar because it, number one, it obviously it adds sugar, and if you're already having a pie, what's wrong with a little more sugar, right? But also because it can kind of sparkle. So turbinado sugar, you may have seen in restaurants in the little packets. It's called sugar in the raw, and it has a crunch, so they're little crystals. Could you sprinkle granulated sugar on here? Yup. Could you sprinkle nothing on here? Yup. You can do whatever your little baking heart desires. Okay, and voila! This cherry pie is about to go into the oven. My recipe from my aunt, and she made the cherry pie filling from scratch, but it says to bake in hot oven at 425 for 35 to 40 minutes. Of course, you always have to watch your pie crust to make sure it's not getting burned. Occasionally, you might have to cover some of the edges because the edges get done first. Now, in this case, the pie filling is already cooked. It's not like apple pie where your apples have to be bubbling. The only thing that has to cook on this pie is the actual crust. So it's a little easier to know when the pie is done. If the crust is all browned, the pie is done because it's just a cherry filling that's already cooked. I'll show you what it looks like later. Now, if I had made a whole solid top pie crust, I probably wouldn't have any dough left over. But because we made the lattice, I have dough left over. And there are a couple things you could do. If I had like cut up some apples and mixed them with cinnamon flour, I could make one rustic fold over hand pie. But what I really want to do is what my mom used to do when I was a little girl, or even a teenager or a young woman baking with her, is it with the leftover pie dough, she used to make me pie dough cookies, and they were unbelievable. Unbelievable, because I am a pie crust freak. So I just rolled it out, not doing anything particularly fancy, but I melted some butter, and I'm just gonna brush it on. And I thought this was only something my mother did, but then I've heard from other people that their mothers or grandmothers did this too. So, and I'm gonna sprinkle with cinnamon sugar. You could just do sugar, cinnamon sugar, nothing, just butter, just the pie crust, jelly, afterwards. I don't know, whatever. This is just a thing. So I don't usually cut it with this, but it's here. And it's pretty, so I'm gonna kind of cut it into cookies, or it looks more like scones, doesn't it? But it's not. And I took 2 pieces of foil, or I could have used, you know, one heavy duty. And I have preheated my countertop oven. It's a Smart Air countertop oven. It has an air fryer, and I can bake and I can broil and make pizza. Mostly use it for toasting. The air fryer, I'm not really super, I'm really starting to feel that air frying is a myth, but whatever. And I don't always do triangles. Usually I just mush it around and make little round things. But I'm gonna put this in the bake. Oh, maybe I'll put it on a pan. Prepare for clatter noise. Should have done this first. I'm so silly. All right, so clatter, clatter. I never really remember how long they take. I've set it for 400 degrees at 10 minutes. Might take less time, might take more. It's just pie crust with butter and cinnamon sugar, and I'll just be checking those. But if you're a pie crust girl, like I am, I mean, you can have the filling, really. I just want the crust. And I have a couple of girlfriends who don't like pie crust, and seriously thinking of cutting them out of my, no, I'm not going to cut them out of my lives. They're 2 of my best friends, but that's just my little oven eating. How can you not like pie crust? I don't understand. I think I would eat fried bugs in pie crust if it was real good pie crust. So I don't know. But anyway, pie crust cookies, pie baking in the oven. We'll show you what happens at the end. So this isn't exactly a exciting presentation, but this is a pie crust cookie, and see, it's flaky and delicious. So I'm gonna dig in as soon as I press stop video. Here's the finished pie. I meant to tell you that I put pies on either a cookie sheet lined with foil, or I just put the foil on the oven because sometimes they bubble over and make a huge mess. And that is no fun to have in your oven. Anyway, this is the finished, beautiful, yummy cherry pie. Hope you enjoyed this. So, pie bakers, you already saw the cherry pie, but instead of posting the video, I waited till I was going to make another pie that had a regular top crust. And so today, about a week and a half later, I'm making an apple pie. I've just started to roll out my bottom crust. I have my pie plate at the ready, and my apples are macerating. This is Granny Smith apples, peeled, cut up. And in there is flour, sugar, and cinnamon, of course. And the apples take a little bit of time. You want the apple juice to kind of get in and dissolve the sugar. So you want to stir that every once in a while. And that will happen while I'm rolling out the pie crust. This is not an exact science. And I told you, I'm not even the one in the family who's good at it. Now I notice that I have a little bare spot here, and I'm using my left hand, which, that's iffy, but I'm just going to patch it. You can see where I patched there. There's no shame in patching, especially on the bottom. So if you need to, patch. Now, today I got kind of smart. I think I got kind of smart. And I actually made extra pie crust. I made 2 double recipes, so I made 4 recipes, I guess you could say. And look, I have that left over, but it will not go to waste. I figured I would leave recipe and a half for the bottom and a recipe, or a recipe and a third and a recipe and a third. Anyway, the bottom line is I made a little extra, and then I can just put this back in the fridge with the extra. And when I'm done with the apple pie, whatever I have left, I'm going to make a nice disc, and it will be the bottom crust for a Thanksgiving pumpkin pie. For this pie, because my mother's recipe says so, I am going to pierce the bottom. Okay, and I'm going to put this empty bottom pie shell in the refrigerator for about 20-30 minutes while my apples are hanging out and doing their thing. I wanted to take just a minute out in this video to say a special thank you to my friend Erin Pinney. She brought over a little gift for me the other day. You can see that it's a rolling pin, and if you can read mirror image, I guess this is, it says 500 subscribers, and then it also says Ellen the Baker Chick. And this is one of the most thoughtful gifts I've ever received. I've known Erin since she was 14. She's my son's good friend and former roommate. They went all through high school together, marching band, and she is the daughter of my heart, one of the daughters of my heart. There are several of them. And she brought this over the other day, and boy, did I do the ugly cry. Anyway, this is a magnificent gift, and I just can't even believe it's just such a beautiful thing. I just wanted you to see an update that all of that flour and sugar and cinnamon has kind of dissolved and is nicely coating the apples. So I know it's a little unusual for me to start with a picture, a video of a picture, but that is a picture of my mom and I that was taken in, I think, 2006 in Kauai, island of Kauai in Hawaii. And the reason I wanted you to see a picture of my mom is because obviously she's the one, well, maybe it isn't obvious, but she's the one who inspired my love of baking. I don't think there was a thing I would rather do when I was growing up, from the time I was a little girl until I was however old, than to bake with my mom. Cooking, but baking was always my thing. Mommy, can we make brownies? Mommy, can we make a pie? Mommy, can we make cookies? And I was the best kitchen assistant, sous chef, cleaner-upper, biscuit cutter, cookie cutter person you could ever want. She trained me very, very well, and it was just so much fun being with my mom in the kitchen. She didn't inspire me to make bread. That was kind of all me, but she did make brownies, cookies, pies. She did make yeast dough, but just not bread. She made yeast dough to make coffee cake with. So everything that I knew about baking in the beginning was from my mom. I come from a family of bakers. My Grandma Pauline was, I guess, I mean, I only knew her till I was 12, but she was one of those bakers who didn't measure, and my mom said her fingers just flew when she made pie crust, and this, and never measured anything, and it was always perfect. So I come from it, honestly. I also had my Aunt Shirley, my mom's sister, who was an amazing cook and baker. So it's in my blood. Anyway, it's time to put the top crust on the apple pie. I have my apples all ready. I showed you a little bit ago that all the sugar is dissolved, the flour is dissolved, it's ready to go. I have a plate of cut up butter to dot the pie with. I have my pie shell that was chilling in the refrigerator, and the top crust has been rolled out. So now I'm going to get that on there, and then I can center it. Move it around.
Don't you want to put the apples in first?
Oh my God. What is wrong with me? This is called being tired. Okay, let's put the apples in blooper number 567. I wonder, why is my husband saying, So funny. Okay, well, I've given you guys a good laugh, haven't I? So I'm going to put the apples in. Of course, you know the recipe will be in the description, but these are Granny Smith apples. As far as I know, pretty much everybody uses Granny Smith apples for pie. They're tart, and then we add the sweet, and there's kind of a nice contrast of flavor. All right, let me just throw this over here. Can't believe I did that, you guys. Some people take the time to slice their apples perfectly, but I think if you've been watching my videos, I just chop them up because you know what? They turn semi-mushy. I can't believe I did that. Okay, so I'm just kind of pushing them in a bit. Oops, stay. You don't get to leave. And then I'm going to grab this butter. And it's been out for a while and it's kind of mushy, so there is no science to this. I'm just what I would call chocolate chipping it. You know, where you want your chocolate chips of your chocolate chip cookies to be scattered in a certain way. So I used to tell my kindergarten students, be a chocolate chip cookie, and then they would know to spread themselves out. And that's what I mean by that. So, oh my goodness, I'm going to be like having nightmares about not putting the apples in the pie. And I know you guys are laughing. Oh well, you can laugh at me, you can laugh with me. It won't be the first time, and it's not the first time, won't be the last. Let's try this top crust again. That's so bizarre. Cannot seriously believe it. Okay, I'm just going to make sure that I have enough space all the way around. These are clean scissors that I'm just going to kind of take off the excess. And I told you earlier in the video when I was making the cherry pie that my husband is much better at this, but he's making me do it anyway. You know what? I need to get one of those Lazy Susans for this kind of thing. That would be really helpful. Oh boy. So, I've told you and I've shown you that making pie crust is easy. The hard part, the only hard part, is making it look pretty. And I am about 60% there. So here we go. I have the bottom that was hanging down from the, and I'm just kind of going to bring it all up. This is part one, is just kind of bringing the bottom part and the top part together. This is not quite the making it pretty part, it's just the first step to that. Oh, I'll never live this one down. Go ahead, you are free to, feel free to comment about my big, silly mistake. I will just laugh at myself with you. That's perfectly okay with me. I have a lifetime of being laughed at for doing silly things. It's not going to stop now. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this, oops, I'm just going to do my very best. Get some flour. And I'm not sure how well I can talk through this. So I don't know if you can see, but it's definitely bubbling like right there, and the crust is nice and brown, so I think we're going to take it out of the oven. Well, we have one complete, gorgeous, yummy looking apple pie that my videographer is showing you a whole view. You can see how the turbinado sugar kind of sparkles. I really like that, and it gives a really nice kind of a crunch to the top crust. You don't need to put that on if you don't want to. If you don't have it, you could use sanding sugar, you could use granulated sugar, you could use no sugar at all. So totally up to you. I hope this pie / pie crust video makes it look like it's easy as pie. And I hope that you will try to make the pie crust, even though it's daunting to a lot of people. I really hope this video made you feel like a little more comfortable, like you could do it. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day and happy pie baking. Yum, 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 yum.